Hi, folks. Thanks to be here for this talk about evolving your APIs. I'm Nicolas Frankel. I've been a developer for 17 years, working mainly in consulting, having different roles, developer, team lead, architect, whatever. Then I became super dissatisfied with the industry because basically you need to solve organizational problems with technical solutions. So I decided, hey, I will do developer advocacy. I will go to conferences, have talks, talk with people. And then the good thing is that when you're a consultant, when I was a consultant, I gave tons of advices. And when my customers didn't follow them, I felt super miserable. Now here I will tell you about something. If you don't follow my advices, that's fine. So who here already designed APIs? Raise your hands, please. REST APIs. Or HTTP APIs, or however you want to call them, RESTful HTTP web APIs, let's say. Okay, so 40%, 30%, 40% of the room. My experience is that in general, when you create your first API, you are very much focused on the semantics. How you define your domain, what are the entities, the principle of rests, or RESTful or whatever. And so you leave out a lot. And one of the things you leave out is the versioning port. And so when your customer or boss comes for the V2, that's probably something like this. And I hope that with this talk, I will give you a few recipes that allow you not to go into this state. So here, the initial situation is generally the following. You have your service. Here, I will call it an upstream, and I will tell you just a bit afterwards why I call it an upstream. And you've got like requests, and perfect, they go to the upstream return the responses, everything is fine. And you notice that here I have written no gateway. Does it work like this? No. Nope. I cannot. Yes. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to highlight the no gateway, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that well. So imagine there was an highlight. And the first thing to do is to introduce an API gateway. Who knows about API gateways? Couple of hands, I would say 10%, but I have the light in my face, so I cannot see everything, but I would say 10%. So that's a good thing, because in general, people will tell me, hey, but we have a reverse proxy, right? Who here doesn't have anything between like the outside world and their services? Everybody has something. In general, you call that a reverse proxy. So the problem becomes, what's the difference between a reverse proxy and an API gateway? And for that, I need to get back in time. So it's obviously not me, but I have white hair, so I might be something like that. I started to use the internet like, well, more than 20 years ago. So that goes way, way, way back. And just for semantics, because I'm quite like focused on semantics, as I mentioned, I was a consultant, and it's very important to use the same words to describe the same realities, otherwise the product you will build won't be the right one. I see a lot of people like using the terms WW or W3 and internet like interchangeably. That's not the case. They are very different stuff. Like the World Wide Web uses the internet, but basically the World Wide Web is just like the management of hypertext documents. A question, I come from France. Is my English understandable? Perfect? Because if you want, I can speak like that as well. I'm not sure many of you will understand. Yeah, I'm trying very hard because I noticed that a lot of French speakers, well, they are not super famous for their good spoken English. Anyway, as I mentioned, I started in 2000, and at the time, I created my first web page. Amazing. And imagine, we already had images, we already had audio, but we had no CSS because the spec didn't exist, and no JavaScript. Can you imagine having the World Wide Web without JavaScript nowadays? It would be paradise, right? And the editor I used, I found it still exists. Of course, it's not maintained anymore, was something called Hotdog Pro. Who knows about Hotdog Pro? Yeah, I see you also have gray hair. But, or I don't see anything, or perhaps you have no hair at all. That's at my age, there can be those two options. Yeah, and the highest feature of Hotdog Pro is that basically you had all the HTML tags at the time, and you could click on them, they would insert it in the text. Imagine that. That was really like WYSIWYG, really great. But at the time, the idea was just to serve static content. As I mentioned, no JavaScript, no CSS, a bit of audio, and yeah, let's serve static content. And for that, people add the web server. And to be very honest, at that time, I don't remember the web server that was used because I was not interested. I was just super happy to put my HTML file in some FTP location, and then it would be rendered. So I assume it was Apache web server, but I cannot say for sure. But of course, it was not enough. We wanted more because it was really important to say, hey, this page was generated at that time, or this is the time of the day. I mean, we had watches at the time, and it was not that long ago, but it was still very important to put it in your web page for whatever reason. And so came PHP, which started as a simple module on the Apache web server. Any PHP developers out there? Yes, a couple. So young developers, I assume. And you have been taught that PHP stands for Hypertext Preprocessor, right? That's a lie. Actually, it stands for Personal Home Page. I kid you not. The origin of PHP means Personal Home Page. Sorry to break your dreams. Of course, afterwards, they understood that it didn't look and sound super professional, so they changed the acronym, but yeah, whatever. Before PHP, we already had CGI scripts, but people understood that was not really convenient. I mean, you would have a script. In general, it was Perl. Perl developers here? Nobody. Oh, a couple. Great. Good. I'm not a Perl developer, but yeah, it's harder for me, I think. Anyway, the idea to generate the HTML from scripts was not super convenient. So the idea behind PHP was you would create your HTML and just add the tags that you would make your page dynamic. Good. But the World Wide Web started to grow and grow and grow. And actually, it became so powerful that companies, not personal geeks, started to use it as their official communication channel. And they wanted a bit more robustness, because when you start using something as an official communication channel, the worst that you can do is to have a 500 or a not available error. So they added redundancy and load balancing into the web server. And now you understand that we had this generic component called the web server, but basically there were two layers. The first one still serves static content. The second one, or I should say the first one, which was the front web server, and it did load balancing. And it would be able to check, hey, this web server that serves static content is down, so I should use another one to forward it to. And afterwards, that was the rise. And now we could have different websites, corporate websites, or even applications sometimes. And so the front web server had also to do routing, so that it was not only all nodes were not equal, some nodes were about serving like one port, and no other nodes were about serving other ports. So this is very important to understand, that what we call a web server has evolved in several steps. Every time we added more features, and of course, the oldest web server, the one I know about at least, like the Apache one, like followed this evolution. And so once you have a web server in front, the component is a web server, but actually the role is not of serving content anymore. It's about everything that I've showed you before, like load balancing, routing, whatever. Well, if it becomes your single point of entry, then it's very easy to add additional like cross-cutting concerns, such as authentication or caching or IP blocking or whatever. And now this web server has become a reverse proxy. Now let's come back to the World Wide Web and how we want like not only documents to like be linked together, but information system. Again, I'm quite old, or in like more positive terms, experienced. And I remember the time when we wanted to share data across the internet, we would use FTP. So you would put a file in an FTP folder. There would be a batch running daily, hourly, whatever, that would process the file and rename the extension to say, hey, I've done my job. Who experienced it already, this kind of stuff? Yeah, the same people, huh? Generation divide. But nowadays, it's not that great because we want like synchronous communication. We want the data right now. We want the integration to be done right now. And the problem is that it's possible within the single tech stack using the technology, Java, Ruby, Python, whatever. But the internet is not a single stack technology, which can be a bad thing or a good thing depending on your viewpoint. So we want to integrate heterogeneous information system together. And for that, the like most basic brick is HTTP. And so comes the idea of an API gateway. We have those APIs that allow integration between heterogeneous systems. And it can be a reverse proxy, but it adds more feature. Once you start having API, you start having other problems. For example, billing. Of course, everybody wants to give their product freely, but probably at some point you will to get money back, you want to monetize, and you will need to have billing. And while it's completely possible on any web server like Nginx or whatever to add this feature, probably you will need to write the code and you will need to stop the web server to add the module and to restart the web server. And that is not possible like in real life. We don't want our single point of entry into our information system to be down for any amount of time. You can have rate limiting, but not only saying, hey, I want to limit to X requests per second. You can say, hey, I want this profile or this group of person or this person to be limited with X, but another group, another profile, another person to be limited to Y. Why? Probably because they paid, so you want the limit to be higher. And so on and so forth. And again, yes, you can have a reverse proxy do that, but probably you need a specialized reverse proxy, and this is the API gateway. So now I hope that I explained to you the difference between an API gateway and a reverse proxy. Let's see how it goes. Like, there are a couple of API gateways already on the market. I advocate for Apache APISIX, which is an Apache project, but there are other ones, like we have competitors. There are also cloud-based ones, The thing is, I didn't mention them because in general they lock you into their cloud, but you have a couple of them. So as I mentioned, because I advocate for Apache APISIX, I will have two slides about it, but then afterwards I will show you how you can evolve your API using an API gateway, and then you can use any other. So Apache APISIX is not a very old project. Actually, it started like 3 or 4 years ago, and it was donated to the Apache Foundation, meaning that nowadays the project is under the management of the Apache Foundation. And who doesn't know about the Apache Foundation? Perfect. So I don't have to explain to you. And now it's a top-level project. We sit on the shoulders of giants, so basically we use Nginx underneath. There is an open REST engine that allows you to run Lua plugins. I'm not a Lua developer. And then you have a couple of out-of-the-box plugins, and also you can develop plugins in other languages. Okay, remember the first step was, hey, we expose our service directly. Now we want to expose not directly, but through an API gateway. So that's it. That's done. So let's do some demo, because I like demo-based stuff. Now I will try to show my screen, and of course it doesn't work, so I need to do this. And here. So I've already created a singular, an architecture. And I have set everything on Docker Compose. I could have everything on my machine, but it's much easier if I use containers. And also, this is on GitHub. On the last slide, you will have the references, so you can play with it at home without any issue. So this is my Docker Compose. The first one is, of course, Apache APISIX with a couple of volumes, whatever. The command is just to wait until the second service, which is actually etcd, has started. So the idea is that Apache APISIX by default stores its configuration in etcd. etcd is a distributed database. It's the one used by Kubernetes. So basically, it's very, very robust. If we have time, I will also show you the APISIX dashboard. Then I have Prometheus just to monitor, and Grafana to show you in a graphical way how it works. And then I could do it in 2 steps, but here it's easier if I do everything in 1 step. I have my old API, and I have the new API. So let's start this. Docker Compose up. The old API is coded in Spring and Kotlin. The new API is coded in Spring and Kotlin, but without any annotations. Well, with one single annotation. I'm using coroutines. Well, it looks super nicer, but that's not the point. So let's see how we can use it. So curl localhost 8080/hello. Nope, it hasn't started yet. No, it's 8081 probably. I hope so. Yes. Okay, and then I can try the other one, which I hope is 8082, yes. Amazing. It's a much better version, right? So the idea is how I can move my clients from the first version to the second web version without breaking anything. As I mentioned, the first step is to set up the API gateway. Now the problem is if I curl the API gateway, it tells me, hey, I receive a request, but what should I do with it? What's the route? So the first step is actually to create the route. Let's do it. So here in this folder, I have all my scripts because I don't want to do any live coding with this kind of complexity. This is based on curl. However, I don't assume that you have curl installed on your machine, so I'm using the Docker curl image. So if you have Docker on your machine, you can do everything in the demo on your machine. I will be using on the same network as Docker Compose, so I need to pass the network, and then I will create a route. And interestingly enough, like Apache APISIX management is based on REST APIs. So here I will create a new route. I give this ID, because this is actually a very critical operation. We need to have an API key. Not everybody can create the routes. And then here we have the data. So you can set a name, we have the methods, the URIs, and then here is the upstream. And the upstream is actually the backend services, the nodes, because there can be like many nodes under one single upstream. Here I have a single one, and it points to the old API. And of course, if you have multiple ones, you can set the algorithm type, and then you can assign weights. Then I will add a plugin, which is Prometheus, so I can, like, it can get the, the logs and the metrics, and so we can check and in a graphical way what happens. So if we start this one, done, and then we get back here. Amazing, now it works. So what did I do in all this setup? I just set up the single gateway and created a route that forwards directly. It sounds really, really stupid, but it's the first step. If you don't follow this step, that you cannot do anything else. Great, so let's do a bit better. The second step is actually to create a version route. Like, as I mentioned, at the beginning, you don't think about versioning, so you directly expose the URL, but probably you want to have a way to refer to the version. There are multiple ways to do that. It can be in the path, and I will use the path because it's the most explicit one. You can use query parameters, you can use request headers. Everything is the same. Those are the three ways. In general, the path one is the most popular. Let's do it. Notice that previously I've created like an upstream, a plugin, and a route into a single call. But actually, those are actually abstractions that we might want to reuse. So in general, you wouldn't do something like this. This is for like basic purposes. What you want to do is to create those abstractions like separately. So here I create the upstream, and for that I have another route. I still am authentified, and I pass it the configuration that I passed before. Perfect. We might want to check how it is. So I will use the Apache APISIX dashboard for that here. Now let's refresh everything, and it's the default one, so this is a very secret admin password. Admin, of course. And here we can see the upstream that I created, and we can see that this is the route that I created previously. Now, as I mentioned, we want to go a bit further, so we will create the plugin configuration. Great. And now we create the route. So what I will be doing, I will change the plugin config, because now there is a dedicated plugin config. And what I want to do is every time I receive a request, I want to, like that starts with v1, I want to forward it to the upstream, but if I forward the v1 something, then the upstream doesn't know about it. So I need to rewrite the request to say, hey, remove v1, remove the prefix. And then the second curl actually creates the second route. Let's run it. So now I should have two routes. Perfect. And I have the upstream. And now if I try to curl, I will use this one because I already have it. And I put v1. Nope. What did I do? What did I do? Hey, yeah, I'm using the upstream directly. Yes. I count on you because I come from the other side of the world. Well, I come from Europe, so let's say that the jet lag has not settled yet. So if I have an issue here, probably I won't be able to fix it. So I count on your collective intelligence to help me. That being said, yeah, like consulting is about like managing expectations, so don't have too much expectations. The next step is actually to let your customers, your clients, the clients of your API know that, you shouldn't use this unversioned path. And the biggest problem at this point is you don't know who is using your API because you didn't think about it before. But now you want to version, and also you want to stop people using this unversioned path. So you should return HTTP 301, saying, hey, you shouldn't use this path. Again, this is quite easy. I have a plugin. Sorry. And it redirects if, like, the route number 1 is actually... Thanks. That's very good feedback. Thanks a lot. I'm not kidding, actually. That's very, very good feedback because I'm looking at my screen and not here. So I want to like update the first route that I created and say, okay, I will have an additional plugin that will redirect like everything that uses the first route, so /hello / whatever, or just /hello to v1 something. Let's run it. Perfect. Now, if I'm using the unversion route, of course, it tells me, sorry. So there are two options at this point. Either your clients like don't automatically follow, and then they will see in their logs that something is broken, and they will be able to say, hey, this is the new path, I should update the client. I should update the code. Or they're doing automatic follow, like curl does, and then it's not an issue. To be honest, I would prefer that you don't do automatic follow, because, I mean, auto-fixing, auto-magic is always good, but if you will never know about it. So I prefer that it breaks, and then you fix it. Okay, great. I think that's pretty good, but we can do better. Remember, I told you the biggest problem that you didn't know about your users. So you should make your users register. But of course, developers don't like to register. Who likes to register? Yeah, you don't want to give your email address, right? Afterwards, you will be pestered for ages. In Europe, we have like some law that prevents that, but yeah, in the US, not great. So you need to provide incentives. In that case, you can say, okay, if you are not registered, we will limit you. But if you are registered, enjoy unlimited calls, or whatever strategy you want to put in place. So let's do it. And here is the fun part. I said I'm not a Lua developer, but there is no plugin in Apache APISIX that does exactly what I want. So what I did is I created a new plugin. Who here is a Lua developer? One person? Okay, so I won't be too ashamed if it's really bad code, and I believe that's not great code. What I did is actually I won't comment the code. I wrote it once, now I don't remember that much. The thing is, I copy-pasted an existing plugin and I adapted it, good, smart consulting stuff. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Anyway, I can run this, And here, what I'm saying is, what I can explain is the parameters, because you can set how like the parameters that you want. I say, if the count is 1 in a window time of, I think it's 60 seconds, so 1 minute, then if it doesn't work, and we will check the key, which is, I will explain it a bit later, I will like send the 4 to 9 status, like over the limit, and more importantly, I will set this message. Please register blah, blah, blah. So you will, your clients will know, hey, I went over the limit, I should do this step to fix it. Of course, they can not register and not have unlimited calls. So now I will do the v1. And now I cannot go further. Okay, how can people register? Well, I told you about abstractions, about the upstream, about the routes. There is another one called a consumer. So we can create a consumer, and here it's one of the simplest authentication methods that I have, that, hey, I have a key authentication, and the key, the value is my key. So here I have a new route, which is called consumers, and I can create John Doe. Amazing. Normally it should appear here. If John Doe has appeared. Is it big enough? Yeah. If I can be bigger, but afterwards I think that it breaks the UI. Okay. And now I have the key, my key. So what I can do is, I will try to retype everything. Curl, I won't try. No, if it doesn't work, I will be API key here. This is what I can do. I can pass a header with the like key API key, which is the default. You can override it, and the value is my key. If I run this command, the Apache APISIX will understand that I am John Doe, and John Doe is allowed unlimited calls. Well, every registered user is allowed unlimited calls. And now I can call it multiple times. I won't have this 4 to 9 problem. Perfect, but we can do better. Now we actually do need to deploy the new version. So we have done all the tests, unit tests, integration tests, but what is the best test? Testing in production. Testing in production is the best test. And probably you know about canary release. Canary release is the idea that you don't release like to your entire client base, but you release perhaps to your internal users, or perhaps to 5% of the users, or perhaps based on a location, or perhaps based on a header, or perhaps based on anything. And I believe it's a great thing, but before you go this way, I think that before that, you should just put the service in production and direct the exact same traffic to it. But you discard the response. Because even with your test harness, there is a high chance that every once in a while, there is a request from production that breaks your service. And you want to make sure that it doesn't break your service at all. So if you are in Java, null pointer exception, if you are in Python, nil, whatever. So before going canary, we should like mirror the production loads and then check that we've got the same HTTP status on the original service than on the mirrored service. How can we do it? Now let's introduce Grafana now. And here I have used the default Apache APISIX dashboard, and then I have added like those two widgets. And basically, I'm monitoring the new service and the old service. And as I mentioned, I already add a couple of calls, so you can see I'm not lying to you. And with what happened, like 404, 200, whatever. Perfect. So now what I want to do is I want to add mirroring. And there is a Proxy mirror. So let's run it. And now we should call our service multiple times. Let's be inclusive. Okay. And let's see what happens. So normally at some point, I should also get some interesting thing. And now, you will notice that actually I've got 404. So we have the bug in Apache APISIX. I'm very straightforward with you. It doesn't work at the moment, so I opened an issue on that. The problem is here. What should happen is we should actually be able to rewrite the request to also remove the /v1. But the problem is that in Apache APISIX, the plugins, they have a priority that is hard-coded. And so first, we should remove the prefix, and then we should mirror the traffic. The problem is currently it's not the case. So what happens is that first, I'm mirroring the traffic, and then I'm removing the prefix, which doesn't work. So doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't skip it, but you should do it anyway, but at the moment it won't be possible with Apache APISIX. Again, bug open. Now it's time to do the canary release for real. No worries. So I've created the new upstream here, a new upstream. It's a bit too big, probably. Nope, here. And then I can do the traffic split. So it's called traffic split, not canary release. Here you have a lot of rules that are possible. What I'm doing right now is I will say, hey, I have a 50% chance of directing or forwarding the request to the new upstream. Do we have enough time? Yes. Did I run it? I don't remember. Well, let's do it. Worst case, it will overwrite everything, and that's fine. And now, ladies and gents, not bad. It's too regular, but okay. So finally. So basically, 50% of chance of going to the new version, and then you check that everything works as expected. Not bad. But at some point, what happens is that you want to remove the V1 because you don't have enough money, enough resources to maintain the V1 and to continue working on the V-through, and then designing the V3. And there is no spec for that, but there's an IETF draft that's called the Deprecation Header. It can be a date or a Boolean, hey, if it's a Boolean, it's deprecated. If it's a date, hey, it will be deprecated at this time. And then you can point to the new resource through another response header called link. And if you really, really want to be by the book, you can also provide a sunset header. So deprecation means, hey, you shouldn't use it. Sunset header, at this point, at this date, it will be completely removed. So there are two steps. Again, plugins for the win, and this one, it works perfectly. Oh, I didn't create the route. So first, I need to create the route. And now I will deprecate the V1. So I will rewrite the response and say in the header, deprecation equals true because it's a demo and I don't care that much. And then I can use the link, and you can see that I can use variables as well. So here. And now I can call the v2. Then every time it's a v2, so of course every time it's a swapped up version. But then now if I call the v1 and I pass the verbose flag, oh, what did I do? Oh, it works less good. Yeah, now you can see deprecation true and the link to the new version that the person should call, that the client should use. And this is how you can, like, bit by bit, step by step, like, evolve your API without breaking your clients too much. Like, we still have another step, which is the best step of all you can enjoy. Because if you like used every of the steps that I've shown you, you know your customers, you know how to do like canary release. So now evolving the API is a non-problem anymore. Thanks for your attention. You can read my blog, you can follow me on Twitter. If you want, as I mentioned, to use the project to like check, because perhaps it was a bit too fast, everything is on GitHub. And if I got you interested in Apache APISIX, you're welcome to have a look. And now there's the dreaded time for Q&A. Hey, don't be shy, folks. I crossed the Atlantic for you. Thanks. You can boo me as well if it was really bad, no worries. Don't feel polite, I'm not. There is a question there. How does it work? Should you pass him the mic or? Okay, so the question is, how flexible is the plugin system? Well, blanket statements, it's very flexible. Doesn't help you much. As I've tried to show you, there are plugins out of the box. So I've always, used most of them, well, some of them, and only once I had to create my own plugin. So if you don't have the plugin that fits you, then you can create your own plugin through Lua. If you are not a Lua developer, there are other like ways to create them, Java, whatever. To be very honest, so far I wouldn't recommend it. We have, like, I will be helping on Google Summer of Code redesign the Java system because I'm a Java developer. I hate the way it's implemented right now. Sorry for that. If you are from Apache APISIX, please don't worry. It's not my fault, I'm very honest. And you look at this video. But yeah, it's very, very flexible again. The good thing is, as you can see, every time you there is no like downtime. Every time you run the curl, you use the plugin, it works out of the box. What I've shown you here is the great way for demo. Like basically you run a curl command, you like change the configuration. Probably that's not what you want in production in general. You want immutable stuff. There is another way to put everything in the YAML file. Then through GitOps, you can like get the new version of the YAML file, and again, Apache APISIX will reload it, and again, no downtime. So I think it's quite good, let's say. Other questions? In general, if there is one question, there are others. It should be easy at this point. Don't be afraid. Oh, you are very hungry, right? Yeah, lunchtime. So no worries, if there are no other questions, you can reach me on Twitter. My DMs are open, and I will be all day around, so like grab me and let's have a chat. Thanks a lot.